Let us pray. Our Divine Father, as we conclude for this week our work in this assembly, we renew our thanks and ask that we may continue our work under your guidance. Amen.
Introduction of visitors.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to introduce to you and through you to members of the Assembly two distinguished visitors seated in your gallery. The Ambassador from Finland to Canada, His Excellency Jakob Bloomberg, and Christian Grafey, the Honorary Consul for Finland here in Edmonton. Will you please extend to them the usual warm welcome of the Assembly?
Presenting petitions. Reading and receiving petitions. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions. Introduction of bills.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce a bill, the Public Service Opportunity Act. This bill would provide a standing offer from the government that anyone who can deliver a service currently being offered by government at the current quality level and at a saving of 50% of current costs will be awarded a multi-year franchise or license to do so upon submission of a credible plan of action.
The Honourable Member for Calgary McKnight has moved first reading of Bill 233, Public Service Opportunity Act. Does the Assembly agree to the motion for first reading? Opposed? So ordered.
A bill being Public Service Opportunity Act, introduced by Honourable Member Mr. Musgrave, is now read a first time. Tabling returns and reports.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to table with the House two annual reports, one being the Department of Hospitals and Medical Care annual report for the year ending March 31st, 1985, and secondly, the Alberta Healthcare Insurance Plan annual report for the year ending March 31st, 1985. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to file for information of the House the report of the Alberta Human Tissue Procurement Task Force dated October 7th, 1985. That task force was chaired by former MLA Andrew Little, and the task force report grew out of a debate on Private Members' Day in this legislature.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to file the 1985 report of the Provincial Senior Citizens Advisory Council.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the annual report for the Northern Alberta Development Council for the year 1985-86.
Introduction of special guests.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to introduce in your gallery Mr. Terry McQuaid and Mr. Norm Slater. These gentlemen are delegates to the Alberta Building Trades Council, and members will have seen them and some of the other members out on the steps of the legislature this morning. They are indicating that they are going to push me for the next few months on a review of the labour statutes. I'd like them to rise and receive the welcome of the Assembly.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to introduce two classes of students from schools in the Edmonton Park Allen constituency. I should do them alphabetically, I think. And Lendrum School, therefore, comes first, Mr. Speaker. 28 students from grades 5 and 6, and accompanied by Ms. Dunlop, their teacher, and Mrs. Vandenberg. I would ask the Assembly, as the students stand, to give them the usual warm welcome. Mr. Speaker, proceeding to St. Martin's School, grade 6 class, 21 students are visiting the Assembly this morning. Their teacher, Will Miklik, and parents Mrs. Zarski and Mrs. Klimchak. I might say, Mr. Speaker, in respect to both of these schools, that I had the pleasure of visiting both last year on more than one occasion, and in particular to provide them with the copies of the Canadian Encyclopedia. And I recall that and would now ask St. Martin's students and teacher and parents to stand and receive the welcome of the Assembly.
Mr. Speaker, I too have the pleasure to introduce to you and through you 20 grade 6 students from the Colchester School. They are accompanied by teachers Carol Roth and Della McCrae, and one of the parents, Mrs. M. Hipkin. And I would ask the Chamber to extend their warm welcome as these students from the Colchester rise to receive our warm welcome.
Mr. Speaker, I today have the honor to introduce to you and to other members of the Assembly 48 students from the grades 5 and 6 class of Delwood Elementary School. Today they are accompanied by their teachers, Mr. Bill Chabak, Renata Swender, and a parent, Mrs. Sanderson. Mr. Speaker, they're seated in the public gallery, and I ask that they rise to receive the warm and traditional welcome of the Assembly.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to introduce to you and through you to the members of this gallery 18 students from grade 6 of Avonmore School in the constituency of Edmonton-Avonmore. They are accompanied by their teacher, Wern Lowry. I would like to have you join me in welcoming them to this Assembly.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to introduce to you and through you to this Assembly 2 members of the grade 9 class from the Delbonita School. Since there are only 2, which comprise half of the class in that school, I'd like to use their names, James Robinson and Serena Helgeson, along with 2 parents that are traveling with them, Margaret Robinson and Sharon Helgeson. These students have traveled 400 miles to be here. It's not often that we have students from our constituency. Would you join me in welcoming them to this Assembly?
Ministerial statements.
Mr. Speaker, on Monday, June the 16th, I announced that pursuant to the Public Inquiries Act, an inquiry will be held into the tragic events of Saturday, June the 14th, 1986, at West Edmonton Mall, where 3 young Albertans lost their lives. Today, Mr. Speaker, I wish to announce that Mr. Kenneth A. McKenzie, QC, Chairman, and Dr. Jeffrey L. Kulak, Commissioner, will conduct this inquiry. In particular, they will inquire into 1, the design, construction, installation, maintenance and operation of the roller coaster. Secondly, the factors contributing to, causes of and circumstances connected with the accident. 3, the adequacy of existing provincial laws, regulations, rules and the standards governing amusement ride operations and safety insofar as they relate to the accident. 4, the adequacy of existing practices, procedures and standards governing amusement ride operations and safety, followed by the owners and operators of the roller coaster insofar as they relate to the accident. 5, the performance of all persons and mechanical components involved in the operation of the roller coaster. 6, the steps that can reasonably be taken to reduce the risk of recurrence of such accidents. And finally, any matters incidental or relating to any of the matters referred to in paragraphs 1 to 6.
Mr. Speaker, in a quick perusal of the ministerial statement, it seems to be complete, and it does seem to answer some of the questions I had about how broad it would be, because we are dealing with the adequacy of existing provincial laws, regulation, rules, and standards. Mr. Speaker, I would look forward to seeing what they come up with, and the only other question I may have at some point is the time frame that they will be reporting back, Mr. Speaker, because we have games coming into roller coasters and that with the Stampede and Klondike Days and all the rest of it. So that would be the only concern I have. As I say, I would support the ministerial statement because it does look like it is a complete looking into, if I can put it that way, into this tragedy.
Mr. Speaker, as indicated in the House earlier this week, our government received a request from the federal government to end the procurement of South African products. We have reviewed this situation and have advised the Alberta Liquor Control Board to cease ordering South African products until further advised. Our present inventory will continue to be offered for sale until fully depleted. The federal government has the responsibility and expertise with which to follow the development of affairs in other nations. Accordingly, we have complied with their request not to procure products from South Africa.
Mr. Speaker, I am very, very pleased with the minister's ministerial announcement. It goes back over a number of years that we've been requesting this particular move. I can think back as late as 3 or 4 years ago. So I welcome the ministerial statement. Praise the minister. Good work. It's time that it should have been done.
Mr. Speaker, as Minister of Manpower, I would like to announce a promotional campaign on Alberta manpower training and retraining initiatives. It was launched June 16th and will run for a total of 3 weeks. The campaign encourages unemployed Albertans to call the Alberta Manpower Career Information Centres and the hotlines, or visit the nearest career centre to find out more about Alberta manpower training programs. The department operates 16 career centres throughout the province. Turn yourself in a new direction. Look us up is the theme of this province-wide campaign, which includes radio and print advertisements as well as promotional materials.
Mr. Speaker, in rising to reply to the third ministerial statement of the day, it's very much like a ministerial announcement last week announcing Senior Citizens Week. Who can be against giving information to the unemployed, Mr. Speaker? So obviously we would support this, but I'd say the information is good if unemployed people are getting it, no matter how inadequate the programs are, Mr. Speaker. The other point that I would make, though, and I think it's a fundamental one, there would be less need for spending money in these advertising campaigns if we put our energy towards working towards an economic strategy of full employment, Mr. Speaker. And the point that I want to make is that if I can use this to the government, as I understand the slogan is turn yourself in a new direction. May I suggest that the government turn themselves in a new direction and bring in much more meaningful announcements from the minister's department about how we're going to get this tremendous rate of unemployment down in this province, Mr. Speaker.
Oral question period.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to direct the first question, if I may, to the Minister of Hospitals and Medicare. Mr. Speaker, as of today, extra billing is no longer legal in Ontario, which leaves Alberta as the only province which there is a significant amount of extra billing and one of only 2 provinces which allows it at all. My question to the Minister is, when will the Minister be introducing legislation to end the unfair practice of extra billing in this province once and for all?
Mr. Speaker, our objectives are to negotiate an arrangement with the Alberta Medical Association such that the funds that are being withheld by Ottawa now with respect to the Canada Health Act can be made available to Alberta. In that regard, I've had a number of meetings with the executive of the Alberta Medical Association. We'll be meeting with them, in fact, again today to pursue those negotiations.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that you're meeting with the Alberta Medical Association. That's an important step. But to be more specific, there seems to me there is a law of the land called the Canada Health Act. Could the minister be more specific about how the government is going to recover, I believe it's some $24 million in penalties, and still in that Canada Health Act it clearly states that extra billing is illegal. How the minister can do this without banning extra billing? Would he be more specific?
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is not accurate in his statement with respect to what the Canada Health Act does or doesn't say. There are provisions in the Canada Health Act for the Federal Minister of Health to determine whether or not a province meets the intent and the spirit of the Canada Health Act. I've been talking with the Federal Minister, and I believe that we can work out some arrangements with the medical profession in this province that will allow us to meet the spirit and the intent of the Canada Health Act and be able to allow us to convince the Federal Minister that we've done that. Those negotiations, of course, can't be held in public, the ones that I'm having with the Alberta Medical Association. When I've completed them, how long that will be, I don't know, but certainly I hope before March 31st, 1987. When I've completed them, we'll have an opportunity then to debate them in this legislature and perhaps outside of it.
Well, just to follow up, Mr. Speaker, on the minister's answer, is the minister saying that he's had consultation with his federal counterpart and that they are going to allow some arrangement in Alberta that would allow the practice of extra billing to continue? Is that what the minister is saying?
Mr. Speaker, what I'm saying is that I've read the Canada Health Act and I understand it.
That's very interesting. I'm glad that the minister has read the Canada Health Act and he understands it. That's a step, I guess, in the right direction for most of the ministers. But the question that I have to the minister, we have until, I believe it's July the 1st, 1987, or we're going to lose a significant amount of money to our treasury at a time that we have a high deficit. My question then to the minister, can he tell us when he will come to some sort of solution to this problem? And secondly, if he is not allowed, when he is not allowed to continue with extra billing, will we then move, when it's clear, to end extra billing in this province?
Mr. Speaker, I think I've already answered the first part of the question. The objective, of course, is to convince the federal minister that we have met the terms of the Canada Health Act by March 31st, 1987. What form that will take, I don't know. We're in the midst of negotiations both with the Alberta Medical Association and we'll be negotiating with the federal government. The honourable member should know that this province provides in its health care insurance plan more insured services than any province in Canada. There are a good number of those services, such as cosmetic surgery and so on, that are not required under the Canada Health Act. So indeed, there can be situations existing in this province or any other where certain services would be billed directly, not covered by health care insurance, or extra billed, and you might still possibly meet the terms of the Canada Health Act. The issue is far more complicated than the honourable member would like to realize, and it will take some length of time and a different approach than that being used by the Coalition on Ontario to bring about a resolution to this problem that will be beneficial to not only the people of Alberta, but to the medical practitioners here as well.
Member for West Loch. Member for West Loch Sturgeon.
Mr. Speaker, through to the Minister in charge of extra billing, could the Minister elaborate on his statement that he was continuing discussions with the doctors to be allowed to go to Ottawa to ask for money back? Since when is the doctor's permission necessary for us to get our taxpayers' money back from Ottawa?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't believe that I suggested at all that the doctor's permission was necessary. What I have said and will continue to say, that the approach that this government will take to the resolution of a problem of this nature is to sit down and have meaningful discussions with all the parties concerned. That means, firstly, the doctors of this province. Secondly, the federal minister who's involved, and to make sure when we're doing that we have in mind the concerns of the people of this province with respect to medical care. I certainly am not going to go to the doctors and say, here is the Ontario Liberal plan. Take it or leave it. I believe that there are better ways.
Supplemental, member for Little Bow. Order. Member for Little Bow, supplemental.
Speaker, supplementary question to the Honourable Minister, and it's with regards to the incidence of extra billing in the province of Alberta. Could the Minister indicate what trend that incidence has taken over the past few months, and has the Alberta medical profession indicated that they're prepared to come to grips with extra billing in the province in terms of voluntary responsibility?
Some months ago, my colleague, the former Minister of Hospitals and Medical Care, did in fact have several meetings with the Alberta Medical Association in an effort to get them to reduce the incidence of extra billing, particularly with regard to people who might be on limited or fixed incomes and elderly people. Since that time, there has been a fairly major and significant reduction in the overall incidence of extra billing in Alberta, particularly with regard to people who are on fixed incomes and not able to afford the additional costs.
Second question.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like today to designate my second question to the member from Edmonton Calder.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to begin by tabling two items for the information of all members of the Assembly. One is a photocopy of the blues for part of yesterday's oral question period. The other is a photocopy of a memo dated June 10th, 1986, from the Edmonton Regional Director of Social Services to the Associate Deputy Minister of Social Services.
It is a touch unusual that we're now having filings in the middle of the question period, but if you'd like to get to your question, please, rapidly.
Of order. We've done that traditionally in here over the last number of years.
Question, please.
Yesterday, in the oral question period, the Minister of Social Services said that staff reductions in her department, I quote, are not in the area of direct services that we provide to the people of Alberta. In the memo, however, it is made clear that in April alone...
Slow down, slow down.
I'm just trying to explain, Mr.
Please, members of the government benches, it is indeed the member's first opportunity in question period. Could we give just a touch more leeway, please? But I know the member will come quickly to her question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the memo, however, it is made clear that in April alone in the Edmonton region, 6 income security positions, 4 of them frontline social worker positions, were terminated. Given this apparent contradiction, can the minister explain how it may be that she did not mislead the Assembly yesterday?
Mr. Speaker, in terms of reductions that have taken place in some particular part of the department where we have, in fact, some 5,500 people working for the Department of Social Services, I would not be familiar with a particular reduction, but I do know this, that I have instructed the management and the senior staff in the Department of Social Services to make sure that they have sufficient people, particularly in the intake area, to be managing the increase in the number of people who are presently applying for social services. And to that end, we are presently, as I understand it, in the hiring mode, utilizing manpower positions that are in place in the present budget.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker. In 1982, the department adopted a standard of 125 cases per income security worker. Is an average caseload of 125 still the department standard for income security workers? And if so, can the minister advise when she anticipates that this goal will be met?
Mr. Speaker, the standard that was developed a number of years ago, as I understand it, has not been maintained the last while because of the significant increase in the social allowance area. And again, to that end, I have been very concerned as a result of my visits to a number of the district and regional offices that the frontline workers are indeed badly overworked, and so have instructed that there be additional staff hired.
Edmonton Calder.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker. The memo indicates, due to unreasonable caseloads, client needs are not being met. There has been an increase in stress-related illnesses among income security staff, and there has been an increase in client violence towards staff. My question to the minister is this: will the minister assure this Assembly that she will now provide a sufficient increase in staff for the income security area as so to ensure these appalling problems are brought under control immediately?
Mr. Speaker, I was very concerned with the honourable member's introduction to the question. Did I understand the honourable member to say that there was an increase in client violence?
Towards staff.
The memo. It's in the memo.
Mr. Speaker, the stress that is related to unemployment and the shortage of income by a number of people, I think, is well known to us all, because it's a stress that any person would feel under similar circumstances. So if there's an increase in this area, I'm sure it is related to the increased numbers of people who in fact are visiting the offices, and that is obvious. And so again, to the honourable member, I have given instructions that the numbers of workers must be increased.
Final supplementary, Edmonton Calder, please.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker. Can the minister offer any reason at all why the involuntary poor in Alberta and those hired to meet their legitimate needs should not conclude that this government is doing everything it can to make their lives miserable?
Sorry, we're dealing in the area of opinion right here. Supplementary, please. The member for Edmonton Meadowlark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Supplementary to the Minister of Social Services. I ask this question on behalf of those people in Alberta who feel that being poor is more than a, quote, rotten inconvenience, unquote, as the minister described it several days ago in her speech in response to the throne. Are the cutbacks that have been mentioned in the question by the honourable member from Edmonton Calder going to affect your department's ability to support those people currently having to rely so heavily on the food bank in order to eat?
Mr. Speaker, I think an important comment to make here is that our very close working relationship with the people in the operating the Calgary Food Bank in trying to obtain an analysis of the numbers who are using the food bank, the circumstances in which they find themselves and why they must access the food bank, that their information, and this is supplied from the Calgary situation, is that it would be some 1% of those people who find themselves now having to utilize social assistance that now go to this food bank. So some 1% of the people are actual welfare, of our welfare recipients are actually accessing the food bank. And Mr. Speaker, we will continue always with the help of those who are also expert in the area of working with the public who now finds themselves short of money, as I think the honourable member will find that I had said, and it is a rotten inconvenience, and unfortunately more and more people have found themselves in those circumstances. But there will be no one, Mr. Speaker, in this province who finds themselves in that position and fits the criteria that has been developed over a long period of time, criteria that is under examination, who will be without. The social allowance policy is clear, and people who apply and fit the criteria will obviously be able to access it.
Main question, Leader of the Liberal Party.
Mr. Speaker, and through you to the Honourable Half Minister of Agriculture. He's a full minister. To the Minister, Associate Minister, Minister of Agriculture, or Minister of half of Agriculture. Is that closer than half of Minister?
Question,
all right,
please.
Okay. The Ontario Minister of Agriculture, the full Minister of Agriculture in Ontario, has granted $49 million, Mr. Speaker, to the province's 15,000 pork producers. Could our Alberta Minister tell us just what he is doing to counter this $49 million boost to Ontario pork producers here in Alberta?
Mr. Speaker, if the member from West Loch Sturgeon would pay attention to the question period, he would recognize that I answered that question when it was put to me by the honourable member from Wainwright on Wednesday in the chamber.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker, I did read it, and his stick handling, his Gretzky-like answers, was impossible to determine just what he was going to do. But, Mr. Speaker, could I ask my very facile friend as Minister of Agriculture just how many jobs that will cost here in our meat packing or pork packing industry if Ontario goes ahead with their subsidy program?
Mr. Speaker, in the release that was put out by the Ontario government in announcing this program, they indicated in that release themselves that it was not going to do anything to increase production of hogs, so I don't see as it's going to have any impact.
Mr. Speaker, I think I speak for many in Alberta that are very concerned about the pork industry and the whole meat packing industry. We brought up yesterday that there's over 100 jobs have been cancelled in Lethbridge. It seems that our minister is presiding over the dissolution of the meatpacking industry. Has he any plans, just any plan, just one solid plan, one scintilla of hope for those that are producing pork in this province?
Mr. Speaker, in response to the member from West Loch Sturgeon, let me indicate to him that we have a number of plans and presently a number of programs in place to offset some of the difficulties that our entire agricultural sector are facing, including the hog industry. One only has to look at the feed grain market adjustment program, which pays out $21 per ton as it relates to grain, to offset some of the negative impacts as it relates to the crow benefit payment. We've also got a very lucrative and worthwhile program as it relates to the reduction of farm fuel costs for our agricultural sector. We hope to have in the final stages in the very near future, which will be forthcoming very soon, the very valuable Farm Credit Stability Program, which will be very beneficial not only to hog producers but to all of the agricultural sector.
Mr. Speaker, as final supplementary, I just want to take a pick at one of the items on the menu that the Honourable Minister put forward before me. One is he aware that the $20 to $21 a ton subsidy for feed also goes to Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario feed producers that are Alberta feed producers that are being denied markets because of the $21 Alberta taxpayer subsidy that's going to grain producers outside this province?
Mr. Speaker, unlike a lot of members opposite, we recognize that we do live in Canada, and we're not an island unto ourselves in this province, and I should point out to him that only 3.8% is paid out under this program to other provinces.
Supplementary, member for Vegreville.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Agriculture. Has the Minister made a study of the Ontario proposal, and if so, does he have any plans of implementing some of those provisions in the Alberta pork industry?
Mr. Speaker, again, as I indicated to the honourable member from Wainwright when he put the question to me on Wednesday, we reviewed where the $49 million was going to be paid and the $5 million as it related to increased market awareness for the hog industry. We have a number of very worthwhile programs in this province already, and we are consistently analyzing the various programs that we do offer the agricultural sector to see if we can't upgrade and revise them so that they are more acceptable and more suitable to our agricultural sector.
Honourable Leader of the Representative Party, followed by the member for St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Municipal Affairs responsible for the Alberta Home Mortgage Corporation. My concern, Mr. Speaker, in my question is with regards to the loss of equity of some $1 billion of that corporation and its administration and certainly its future. So my question to the Minister of Municipal Affairs with regards to the amalgamation of the Alberta Home Mortgage Corporation with the department or within the department, does this mean that the Alberta Home Mortgage Corporation will be eliminated in this province?
Mr. Speaker, the Alberta Mortgage and Housing Corporation, which is the successor to the two predecessor corporations, Housing and Mortgage, is not scheduled for dissolution at this time.
Mr. Speaker, supplementary question to the Minister. In the new budget that was brought down, the budget for the Alberta Mortgage and Housing Corporation was reduced by some 22.5%. Could the Minister indicate whether there will be a significant contraction in the role of AMHC in this province?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the budget always reflects the need the corporation would have for capital to lend, and at the present time, given the number of housing starts and other types of development, the budget is considered to be adequate for that purpose.
Mr. Speaker, supplementary question. In a letter of information received from the former minister, indication was given to me that as of January 31st, 1986, AMHC owned some 4,442 properties. Of these, 3,593 were designated rental, 415 were designated for sale. My question to the minister, Mr. Speaker, with that amount of real estate being held in place by the Alberta Mortgage and Housing Corporation, will the same policy be followed as was followed by the previous minister, that the properties would be retained in the portfolio of AMHC rather than put out on the open market?
Well, Mr. Speaker, there's a delicate balance there, of course, in the sense that the marketing of a lot of properties owned by the corporation at any given moment would have an effect on the marketing of homes elsewhere and in the same communities in particular, homes owned by private citizens. So the policy is that the large number of homes owned by the corporation are basically held as rental properties, and the sale of those in the market is judged according to the house prices province-wide.
Mr. Speaker, final supplementary. It's with regards to the...
I had your three supplementaries. Member for Westlock Sturgeon.
Mr. Speaker, to the minister, in the sale of foreclosed homes, is the minister giving any thought to a program whereby the original purchaser who is being foreclosed upon can be given an opportunity to buy back the foreclosed home at the same price as it's going to be offered on the market, which is usually quite a lot less than what it was being foreclosed for.
Mr. Speaker, I know of no policy which would work against that situation, and I think I can assure the honourable member that in those circumstances the former owner would be as credible and available a purchaser as any other person.
Member for Edmonton Beverly.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister, it is my understanding that the Government of Alberta through the CMHC owns the property on which the City of Edmonton is proposing to develop a landfill site in Northeast Edmonton. Could the Minister tell me, are there any discussions with the City relative to the sale of this property, or is this sacred land not being made available for landfill sites?
Mr. Speaker, I would have to take that question as notice and get back to the honourable member as to the ownership and any intention to market it.
Member for St. Paul, followed by the member for Edmonton Gold Bar.
Mr. Speaker, a question to the Minister of Education. What is the original amount of funding allocated to the Expo 86 student transportation grant, and has all that funding been taken up?
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the question from the member from St. Paul. The Expo grants, for background of new members, were announced in December of 1985 and provided $100 to assist students in Alberta to travel to Expo 86. The original allocation from lottery funds for that purpose was $3.6 million. Because of the interest of students and the high take-up, that figure has now been estimated to be $3.9 million.
A supplementary, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister. Are there not student groups who have not been able to receive funding under this program?
Mr. Speaker, when the program was originally announced in December of 1985, the original deadline for application by school boards was December 31st, 1986. Because we felt at the time that a lot of students hadn't yet benefited from the program nor applied, that deadline was extended a further 2 months to March 31st, 1986. I'm not aware of students that haven't been able to apply for the program. There have certainly been inquiries as to whether the program would be extended. But I'm not aware of students that have been turned down.
Member for Edmonton Gold Bar, followed by the member for Calgary Mountain View.
Mr. Speaker, to the Honourable Minister of Hospitals and Medical Care relative to the hospital and medical situation in Cold Lake. Recently, the local hospital board, Mr. Minister, has dismissed the administrator, and I understand you've directed them to secure a replacement. And have also asked the College of Physicians and Surgeons for an inquiry into the dearth of doctors in the region. My question, Mr. Speaker, is will the Minister outline what other plans he has to ensure sufficient and continuous medical and administrative support is made available to the people of Cold Lake?
Mr. Speaker, that's an important question. Shortly after I was appointed to this office, I did have information provided to me that there was a problem with respect to the John Neal Hospital in Cold Lake. The member for Bonnyville, in fact, discussed it with me. I also received a copy of a petition from citizens in the area who are concerned about the actions of the hospital board. So I took the opportunity to travel to Cold Lake and to meet with, first of all, the hospital board, its chairman, and I believe all of its members, and the acting administrator at the time. I then met with a group of citizens who had expressed some concern with respect to the dismissal of the administrator. I then had some telephone conversations with both the mayor of Cold Lake and the mayor of Grand Centre. And finally, after having discussed the matter at length with officials in my department, it was my determination that the medical care of the people in Cold Lake is best left in the hands of the existing board, who I believe are able to handle both the commissioning of a new hospital that's under construction and the medical care of the people there. I communicated that information to the board and suggested to them that they ought to move with all possible speed to hire a new administrator and a new assistant administrator. I was also made aware while I was in Cold Lake of the difficulty with respect to conflict between certain members of the medical staff in the Cold Lake Hospital, and I communicated that information to Dr. Roy Lariche, the Registrar of the College of Physicians and Surgeons, and asked him if he would inquire into the problems associated with the medical staff, and he's assured me not only would he undertake that inquiry, but the college would try to ensure that there's adequate medical staff in Cold Lake in the event that some doctors leave, as I understand they're preparing to do. So I believe the situation is well at hand.
Mr. Speaker, supplementary to the Minister. Mr. Minister, you have commented in regard to the Cold Lake that perhaps an elected hospital board might more effectively represent the views of the region as opposed to the presently appointed board. My question, sir, is does this represent a policy view of the government in regard to hospital boards throughout the province?
Mr. Speaker, the situation with regard to the hospital board in Cold Lake is that some members are elected and some are in fact appointed. One of the members who represents the Improvement District was elected in October 3 years ago during the time of municipal elections. Two of the members are councillors in the town of Cold Lake and the town of Grand Centre, elected councillors and then appointed by their respective councils to the hospital board. There are two other members representing those two towns who are appointed and members at large. The concern of the citizens of the area was that they had not had an opportunity to, in fact, elect these people as hospital board members, except in the case of the one representative of the ID. The MD representative is also appointed. What I said was it was my view, considering the concerns of the citizens in that area, that it would be best for the municipal authorities involved this fall during the course of municipal elections to elect all of the hospital board members. That doesn't obviously necessarily mean that's the policy of the government right across the province. But one of the things I do want to have a very careful look at over the course of the next couple of years, and members of this Assembly might be interested in initiating some debate there, is the question of whether or not hospital boards in this province should be elected as opposed to appointed, or whether the present system is serving the needs of our citizens adequately. I think that's an open question, at least in my mind. Obviously, the existing situation with respect to our laws governing the election and appointment of hospital boards will continue until that time.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Minister, for the year ending March the 31st, 84, Alberta had a discrete patient-doctor ratio of 639 to 1. Cold Lake, with its 6 general practitioners, and I understand even that may now be reduced, and a service area of 12,000 patients, has a patient-doctor ratio of 2,000 to 1. Will the Minister explain how the practitioners' incentive program has had any effect on this inequity of service in the Cold Lake region?
Mr. Speaker, first of all, the patient-doctor ratio can't be compared in an individual hospital as opposed to what exists across the entire province. There are obviously a great deal more specialists in areas like Edmonton City or Calgary, where some of the larger hospitals and more specialized facilities are. So you won't find patient-doctor ratios being equal, particularly in the rural areas. The honourable member did ask my office for and received some information with respect to the incentive program that was developed to attract physicians to smaller rural communities, and that's been effective, as I understand it, in a number of communities. I'm not aware exactly what effect it might have had on Cold Lake, but I can say this. When the new hospital is opened there, and members should know that we presently have a 50-bed hospital that's comprised of some trailers added to an old structure. We have a new 120-bed with provisions for additional bed hospital that's almost completed and due to open this fall. At that time, one could expect that there will be an increase in the medical staff because there will be an opportunity for them to practice and have the facilities that are necessary. So I'm not at all alarmed by the fact there's only 6 doctors in Cold Lake at the present time. I think that's adequate considering the facilities there. What I am concerned about is the maintenance of that medical staff. If we lose 2 or 3 of them, then there could be a serious situation. And that's a responsibility for the College of Physicians and Surgeons, and they've assured me they'll work closely with us.
That's like extra billing.
Member for Edmonton Highlands, followed by the member for Red Deer South. Final supplementary on this issue, member for Athabasca-Lac-La-Biche. Brief supplementary.
The Minister of Hospital is probably aware of the extended care problem in the Athabasca Hospital. Since the hiring of extended care to run the Athabasca Hospital in March, it was promised to the public that the auditor's report would be revealed. At this date, the hospital board has refused to reveal the auditor's report. When?
Excuse me, honourable member, please take your place. Take your place, please. I'm sorry, this is a supplemental question to the other issue. It must be very brief and concise. We cannot have all this extra material on the supplementary.
Okay, sorry, Speaker. Will the Minister of Hospital please order the release of these reports to the public as soon as possible?
Mr. Speaker, either elected or appointed hospital boards in this province have certain responsibility for the operation and control of the hospital and its staff. In the case of the Athabasca Hospital, that board is still in place, and I would advise the honourable member that he might want to direct his inquiries toward the board.
Member for Edmonton Highlands, followed by the member for Red Deer South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wonder if this morning the Premier would advise what representation he received from the Minister of Manpower, which led him to institute his Guaranteed Employment Program, or GEP, for former Cabinet Ministers. Was the Manpower Minister's intervention decisive in leading to the Premier's decision?
Mr. Speaker, I find I'm having a great deal of difficulty getting the drift of the question.
We all are.
Mr. Speaker, to clarify, I was wondering if the Premier received any advice from the Minister of Manpower on employment opportunities, a guaranteed employment program for previous Cabinet Ministers.
Pretty clear, Doc.
I assume, Mr. Speaker, that fits somewhere into the use of the question period for matters of urgent information.
Question, Leader of the Liberal Party.
Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, in view of the aid program that the honourable opposition member mentioned that the Premier has instituted, could he tell the Assembly if there's been any increase in the envelope of salary for all these, that mass employment program he announced a couple of days ago for all the ex-ministers? Are they going to receive more as chairman of these different committees than what these committee chairmen received 4 years ago? Do you know what the output will be?
There hasn't been, Mr. Speaker, but we'll certainly review it, and I guess the honourable member for Westlock Sturgeon is making that representation. We'll certainly review it. Mr. Speaker, I might say that each of those appointments are openings that are necessary to be filled. I'm extremely pleased that members who are elected take on. I'm extremely pleased, Mr. Speaker, that members who are elected are prepared to take on these extra duties. And it's far better, I feel, to have elected people rather than appointed people in positions like this representing the people of Alberta. I'm very proud of them for taking on these extra duties.
Member for Red Deer South. Now you're coming back to supplementary.
Okay. I wonder if I might have one more supplementary. I just wonder if the Premier has arranged a meeting with the Minister of Career Development and Employment. I'm sorry, I forgot that there was a new title for that. To explore ways that this guaranteed employment program might be extended to the 130-odd thousand ordinary Albertans who are unemployed.
Mr. Speaker, we'll even consider members of the opposition, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Red Deer South.
Christmas came
Mr. Speaker, a question to the Minister of Manpower. Earlier this week, the Minister responded to the current student employment opportunities by pointing out that we had two very good programs, the Hire a Student program and the Summer Temporary Employment program. Both of these programs have been long-standing programs and have worked very well in our community, and I think they've worked very well throughout the province for young Albertans. But in light of the current job situation, has the new minister had an opportunity yet to give any thought to some new initiatives addressing the current situation in Alberta?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, the answer is yes, Mr. Speaker, and due to the tremendous success of the Hire a Student program, which is a summer temporary employment program, our department has responded by initiating the development, in cooperation with the federal government, of a program called the Youth Employment Centers, and those will be located both in Calgary and Edmonton. Unlike the Hire a Student program, Mr. Speaker, this program will operate year-round, and it'll be available to youths that are between the age of 15 and 24, and it will assist them in attaining, retraining, and enhancing employment opportunities. And I would like to say that in spite of the member for Norwood's remarks, Mr. Speaker, this government is going in the right direction.
Supplementary question, member for Edmonton Highlands.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if the minister would elaborate if these are something like the job clubs that the government prior to recent dissolution had endorsed, privately operated for profit, or if these are public service.
Mr. Speaker, these programs are in conjunction with the municipalities. They are, we have worked in consultation with them. They are going to have a large role in the operation of these programs, and we are now just waiting the final approval of the federal government before we can formally proceed and make a statement to this House.
Member for Lac-La-Biche, Athabasca.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Advanced Education, in view of the recent boycott at ABC Grouard involving over 400 people boycotting the ABC institution out there, would the Minister of Advanced Education indicate where and when the much-needed merit student housing units for the centre will be built?
Mr. Speaker, following a meeting that involved the MLA for the area and the Minister responsible for Native Affairs and myself with Native leaders from the community, we reached an agreement whereby we're going to have a joint task force or review committee with the citizens that are concerned and review not only that subject but other items relating directly to the training center that the Natives have a particular interest in, and I expect those activities to begin very shortly.
Supplementary, I'm very pleased to hear that. Since over 60% of the population at ABC Grouard is Native, and a lack of consultation with the Native people is a long-standing tradition of this government, I'm very pleased to hear the Minister will be starting meaningful consultation with the Native community out there. Now, a supplementary, what is this department policies regarding groups such as the President's Advisory Council of ABC Grouard? What guidelines are there for membership on such councils, and how representative are they of the population living in that area?
Mr. Speaker, before responding to the question, I'd like to correct a statement that I believe the honourable member probably made innocently in saying that this government has a record of non-consultation with the Native groups in this province. He knows that's blatantly incorrect.
That's correct. That's correct.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let's go back to the constitutional conferences and see what premier of what province was at the forefront on behalf of Native Canadians. Let's check the record.
guys are getting like Ottawa over there.
I didn't realize there was so many thin skins over on the other side of the house, Mr.
Don't like to hear it.
But I guess I was so engrossed with the inaccuracy in the member's preamble that I didn't catch the import of his question. Would you mind repeating the question, please?
Supplementary.
Excuse me, honourable member, please take your place. Time for question period has expired. I'm glad to see that the popularity of question period continues. We have left today 8 members in the on-deck circle. The Minister of Education would like to supplement an answer as given earlier. Do we have the agreement of the House?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I was speaking about the Expo grants and my enthusiasm, I said that the program had been announced in December of '86. In fact, it was announced in December of '85, and the 2 extensions were March 31, '86 and May 31, '86.
Ask the Minister supplementary in that.
That supplemental information as a courtesy at the end of question period. Might we revert briefly to introduction of special guests?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've got phase 2, I suppose, of the Delwood School here. 115 grade 5 and 6 students are in the members' gallery. They're accompanied by their teachers, Morris Timofachuk. I'm probably got that one wrong. I may get the next one wrong. I've not met with them yet. Another teacher, Bill Harpeniak.
Carry on, Tom. Don't let it bother you, Tom. What's the other name?
With a name like Sigurdsson, I get stuck after 3 syllables, you know. And I'm sure I'll do better with this one. Another teacher, Rose Clapstein.
Oh, yeah, I got that one right.
It's normally the other way around. We normally welcome that. However, Mr. Speaker, they're also accompanied by a parent, Marlene Lacusta. Mr. Speaker, I would ask that they rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
Mr. Speaker, the gentleman I'm about to introduce and ask the House to acknowledge and show their appreciation for really needs no introduction to many of us. I hope he is seated in your gallery. I can't see from here. Mr. Don Cunningham is now on his last day of work after 21 years of faithful service to this government, most of it spent working in the Legislative Assembly building. And I'd ask that he stand and receive the acknowledgement of the House.
Orders of the day.